At one time, Dale Carnegie rented the grand ballroom of a certain New York hotel for 20 nights in each season in order to hold a series of lectures. At the beginning of one season, he was suddenly informed that he should have to pay almost 3 times as much rent as formerly. This news reached him after the tickets had been printed and distributed and all the announcements had been made. Naturally, he didn't want to pay the increase. But what was the use of talking to the hotel about what he wanted? They were only interested in what they wanted. So a couple of days later, he went to see the manager. And he said, "I was a bit shocked when I got your letter. But I don't blame you at all. If I had been in your position, I should probably have written a similar letter myself. Your duty as the manager of the hotel is to make all the profit possible. If you don't do that, you will be fired and you ought to be fired. Now let's take a piece of paper and write down the advantages and the disadvantages that will accrue to you if you insist on this increase in rent." Then he took a piece of paper and ran a line through the center and headed one column advantages and the other column disadvantages. He wrote down under the head advantages these words: ballroom free. Then he went on to say, you will have the big advantage of having the ballroom free for rent for dances and conventions. That is a big advantage, for affairs like that will pay you much more than you can get for a series of lecturers. If I tie your ballroom up for 20 nights during the course of the season, it is sure to mean a loss of some very profitable business to you. Now let's consider the disadvantages. First, instead of increasing your income from me, you are going to decrease it. In fact, you are going to wipe it out because I cannot pay the rent you're asking. I shall be forced to hold these lectures at some other place. There's another disadvantage to you also. These lecturers attract crowds of educated and cultured people to your hotel. That is worth a lot to the hotel, isn't it? As he talked, he wrote these 2 disadvantages under the proper heading and handed the sheet of paper to the manager saying, I wish you would carefully consider both the advantages and the disadvantages that are going to accrue to you and then give me your final decision. He received a letter the following day informing him that the rent would be increased only 50% instead of 300%. Mind you, he got his reduction without saying a word about what he wanted. He talked all the time about what the other person wanted and how he could get it. Suppose he had done the human, natural thing. Suppose he had stormed into the manager's office and said, what do you mean by raising my rent 300% when you know the tickets have been printed and the announcements have been made? 300%? Ridiculous, absurd, I won't pay it. What would have happened then? An argument would have begun to steam and boil and sputter, and you know how arguments end. Even if he had convinced him that he was wrong, his pride would have made it difficult for him to back down and give in. First, arouse in the other person an eager want. He who can do this has the whole world with him. He who cannot walks a lonely way. Tomorrow you may want to persuade somebody to do something. And before you speak, pause and ask yourself, how can I make this person want to do it? People who can put themselves in the place of other people, who can understand the workings of their mind, need never worry about what the future has in store for them.